Order, please rise for Mayor Michael Fougere.
Please be seated. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 27th meeting of City Council. I would like to receive a motion, please, to confirm the public agenda with the additions from the clerk's office. Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Seconder, please. Okay, Councillor Young. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the minutes from the regular and special meeting of City Council on April 29 and 2015, respectively. A motion to accept those, please. Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Ferndura seconds that. Any discussion on the minutes, errors, or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well, as part of the approval of the agenda, we have approved an matter of urgent business. This is the 1971 Albert Street Capitol Point construction site. It is urgent business. It requires unanimous consent of council to put it on the agenda. So I'm going to ask members of council by show of a yes or no to support bringing the report before us tonight. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And we now have copies of the report from being given to the gallery from the security at the corner over here. So I'm going to ask the administration to provide us with a background on this report, CM9-6, before we entertain it. Mr. Onwright.
Through your worship. So the report in front of council regarding Capitol Point is a receive and file and an update on the award of the contract, which was awarded this morning to CBS Contracting, Inc. If council has any questions regarding the contract, I will ask Ms. Howrluck to provide context to them.
Sarlach?
Through your worship, I can answer any questions that council might have. The award of the contract with the contingency is just over $2.9 million. The construction will start in mid-June 2019 and is expected to take until October of 2019 to be complete. The taxes will be the $2.9 million. As construction takes place and bills come forward, we will be placing all of those fees and costs onto the taxes so that they can be recovered through the tax processes or through the sale of the property should that take place. So at this point, we are moving forward. We'll be notifying the surrounding properties first thing tomorrow morning to go through the process. We'll be trying to mitigate as best as we can any traffic accommodations that would be required in order to fulfill this contract. I can answer any other questions council may have.
Thank you for that. So this is a receive and file. It is under the authority of the administration to do the RFP and award the contract. This is notice for council. So if I can have a list of speakers, actually a motion to accept, receive and file. Councillor Stevens, seconder. Councillor Flagel. We do have speakers. Councillor Flagel.
Thanks. Just a question regarding this. So the process for tendering, just so we know, because we're always the ones that get the questions that it was fair or not fair or unfair. Was it fair? And public?
I think we know the answer to that question. Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, yes, I can tell you it was a fair process. It was a bidding process that went up on SAS tenders. We had a number of proposals that came in. They were all evaluated. It was a 2-envelope process, and it got us to where we are today with the award to CBS Contracting.
Thanks. Now, CBS Contracting, where, again, it's going to be asked, are they local, Saskatchewan, Alberta? Where are they from?
Ms. Harlock?
Through your worship, I might ask Ms. Gazmo to go through the details of the contractor that was selected.
Ms. Gazmo?
Through your worship, they are a local contractor. They're from here in Regina.
Okay, good, thank you. The other thing is, I'm okay with the 2.6 mil. I'm just wondering, what are we talking about when we're saying contingency of $390,000? What is the contingency for everybody else?
Ms. Harlock?
Through you, your worship, I might ask Ms. Gazmo to go through the details, but generally it's speaking is with every project, sometimes as we get through onto the project and start moving forward with things, there's unexpected things that may arise during the construction process. So with all of our construction projects, we always have a contingency fund in case of those types of things that might arise that were just unanticipated. Do you have anything else to add? No.
Okay. The other thing is, no, unless I'm over completion of October in 2019. Have we built anything into this that we can't get it done till January, maybe February of 2020? Have we built anything in that there's a stop, like you got to get it done, or we're going to start fining you for not finishing the job by the end of October, kind of a thing?
Ms. Howard?
Through your worship, I'll start and then ask Ms. Gazmo, but that we had put very clear parameters throughout the RFP and requirements with respect to completion. Of course, with any construction project, weather is dependent,
Sure.
Which may cause delays, but of course, our primary goal is getting the site safe in the fastest way possible, and I believe CBS Contracting Incorporated has proposed something that is reasonable and has taken into account the timelines, because obviously as we go into the winter seasons, there becomes more issues with compaction and those sorts of things. So we want to ensure that we can have this project completed as quickly as possible. And for us, it's the end of October. I'm not sure if Ms. Gazmo has anything else to add.
Ms. Gazmo?
Through your worship, the only thing I'll add is it's in early days. The contract was just awarded today. We will have some meetings with CBS in the next coming days, and that will give us more details on their planned schedule. They do plan to work 24 hours a day, potentially with hauling in the evenings and doing some of the site work during the day. So I do believe they have a plan and a schedule that is intended to meet the October deadline.
Okay. Thanks. And one more thing with this is the sidewalks that go around this. Is this the cost included in this 2.992 mil?
Ms. Howard?
For the site and the sidewalks.
Okay, so it's in there. And then do they have to come forward to get a noise bylaw exemption if they're going to work 24 hours?
Ms. Gizmo? Or Ms. Howard? Sorry.
Yeah.
Ms.
Yeah, Ms. Gazmo.
Gizmo.
Through your worship, we'll work with them to make sure that they have all the relevant permits.
Okay.
We are working with them to develop a haul route that will have minimal impact on residents.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor Hawkins.
This is good news, Your Worship. Thank you. Two questions. First is, where's the fill coming from to fill the hole?
Ms.
Through your
Howard?
worship, I might ask Ms. Gazmo to explain where the fill is.
Ms. Gizmo.
Through your worship, there's potentially two sites, maybe more. The first part of the fill is coming from a stockpile of material that we have next to the Cali Curling Club. That was from previous city projects. And then the remainder of the fill, the contractor will be supplying.
Thank you very much. Second question, Your Worship, and it may not be possible to answer this yet, but what might the public expect to see in terms of traffic disruption on Victoria and Albert?
Ms. Howard?
Through your worship, we are going to look at traffic accommodations, and it is a little bit early as we need to work with the contractor as they got on the site. But as Ms. Gazmo said, there is a provision within the contract for 24-hour services, and we would dictate the haul routes to minimize the impacts to the citizens. So we're trying as best as we can, because we know that there's a lot of construction going on within the downtown core, so we'll try as best as we can to minimize that. And there would be many advance notices and PSAs that would explain anything that would come up with respect to traffic accommodation.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. No other speakers to the report. I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Now we'll move on to our regular council agenda items. We have, through delegations, public notice, bylaws, and related reports. Our first delegation is John Hopkins. Good evening, Mr. Hopkins. You identify yourself for your record, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and maybe questions afterwards.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Regina City Council. My name is John Hopkins, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Regina District Chamber of Commerce. I'm here tonight to continue to show our support for the Namron Development Corporation's downtown project. I want to begin my comments by clearly indicating that we have supported this project from the start and believe that it is important to see this project through to completion. I understand and appreciate that the housing proposal is not the subject of the report before you, but it is the ultimate goal for the city and the proponent. This project is projected to cost $110 million and generate approximately 500,000 hours in employment and meets the objectives of both the OCP and the downtown plan. Moreover, the project makes a very positive statement in relation to reconciliation, given the fact that Namron Development Corporation is 100% an Indigenous organization. Your Worship, I want to make a few brief comments about Namron. Namron is a true leader in the nonprofit housing sector. Not only here are they a leader in our community, but nationally and internationally. In part, this is due to the fact that the leadership of Namron looks for innovative solutions to challenges facing nonprofit housing providers. For example, Namron has a number of commercial operations that it uses to generate profits. Those profits, in turn, are used to augment the housing needs facing our community. A novel concept that the Regina Trades and Skills Center used to provide more training also within our community. As for the report before you, we would like to respectfully request that you concur in the recommendations as outlined by your administration. I believe we all understand what the ultimate goal is, that this report is simply a means to help us achieve the goal. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. See if there's any questions from members of council. You were very clear. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery, and we'll move on to our next delegation, Mr. Robert Byers. If you can identify yourself for the record, who's with you. You have 5 minutes for your presentation as well.
I'm Robert Byers, President and CEO of Namron Housing Corporation. This is Rob Spellacy from Namron, Brian Saunders, and Phil Robertson, a part of our building committee.
Right ahead.
So Namron Housing Corporation is a not-for-profit Indigenous affordable housing provider, and since 1977 has reliably and professionally provided affordable housing facilities in Regina. Its current stock of houses numbers 179, plus a 49,000 square foot commercial space on Winnipeg Street, all of which we operate and maintain. We also support and carry out a number of socially minded services in Regina aimed at assisting the homeless in our community with an emphasis on Indigenous services. We purchased 1840 Lawrence Street from the province of Saskatchewan on August 15, 2014. Later, during 2016, we purchased the adjacent lot immediately to the north of 1840 Lawrence at 2301 11th Avenue from the City of Regina. Prior to this purchase, the city had rented out this land as a parking area, and now under our control, this use continues. During 2015, we sought and received permission from the city to demolish 2 adjoining buildings that existed at the 1840 Lawrence site. The proposal was to prepare the conjoined sites for the construction of a multi-purpose building containing 170 dwelling units of affordable housing, together with supportive facilities including ground-level retail, grocery store space, a daycare, a community and amenity space, as well as commercial space and a car parkade. Demolition was completed during December 2015. As a non-profit organization to assist in raising funds for the proposed building, we subsequently sought the approval from the city for the use of the Lawrence Street site for temporary parking as an extension of the parking already established at the city on 11th Avenue. During September 2015, through the discretionary use process, permission was granted to allow us the use of Lawrence Street as a temporary parking until September 2018. We are pleased to report that the temporary parking lot has averaged 85% rented, providing an important public service to the community. Our current application to continue to use 1840 Lawrence Street as temporary parking until December 31st, 2020 is not based on the desire to profit from the land, but to assist us in acquiring funding for our affordable housing project. It would seem a loss to the community and certainly to us if the land sat idle and vacant in the meantime. The reason for requesting the extension extension date is to allow us adequate time to continue to work with CMHC and Indigenous and Northern Housing Solutions in pursuit of funding under the new National Housing Strategy Co-Investment Fund, and assuming approval of funds to provide us with additional time to also work with private funding institutions, complete working drawings and specifications, the acquisition of a firm fixed construction price, and agreed construction contract, with construction commencing shortly thereafter, early 2021. We have been diligent in moving this project forward to meet the ever-improving standards of construction, serving every requirement expected of it. Since 2015, we have reconfigured the building to remove the commercial office space due to the provision of this use by other developers in the city, and have replaced this with additional in-building car parking and a larger community centre. This work culminated in a revised project report and a business plan document dated July 2018. During May 2018, through CMHC, the federal government announced the new Co-Investment Fund program, which made available to qualifying affordable housing projects across Canada, $40 billion over a 10-year period. Following some considerable work to meet the more demanding approval criteria of the Co-Investment Fund, especially in the areas of business planning, energy conservation, and accessibility, we submitted our completed funding application during late October 2018. We are currently negotiating with CMHC and Indigenous and Northern Housing Solutions.
Mr. Byers, you have about a minute to go in your time.
And expect a number of meetings to be held in the near future, including one set for May 28, 2019, tomorrow, with a view of acquiring funding approval for the project. We are advised that such a project could potentially receive up to 95% of the required funding under the National Housing Strategy. To the best of our knowledge, temporary parking at 1840 Lawrence Street has not created any problems within the downtown since it was approved in 2015. Indeed, it is our impression that it has been appreciated by the public in general. If this was an application for permanency of parking use, then we too would be concerned at the precedent this would set in the downtown. It is not as though Nameron's application is for speculative reasons, which we suggest gives our application a moral purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right on time. We do have questions, though. Let's start with Councillor Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming this evening. It would be really helpful if you would tell us a little bit about your vision for the building, affordable housing, and what kind of things would you see happening there. You have Mr. Saunders here with you this evening, so if you could talk a little bit about your vision.
Okay. Yeah, so when we started, well, even to where we are today, is we thought of having really a self-contained community within the downtown of Regina and really playing a part in the revitalization of downtown. So there's always a need for housing in the affordable housing sector or industry. And we thought if we can bring that downtown and have the services that these people would need in that building, like the grocery, like daycare, an amenity room. We thought if we can partner with other nonprofits and community-based organizations, that this really will be a stepping stone for the people that live there to move or to buy homes of their own or to move into some of our other places that are, I guess you'd call them detached homes around the city.
Okay.
Your Worship and members of Council, I just wanted to add a few words, if I may. There's no such thing really as affordable housing these days. It's a matter of making it affordable. And one of the ways that Nameron seek to make this affordable is to place some commercial uses within the building which will earn them surpluses. I can't say profits because they're a non-profit making organization, but will earn them surpluses that they can then use to operate and maintain the buildings and to ensure that they stay in good shape through time. And of course there are other services that are being offered, such as the daycare, which is needed in downtown, I would suggest, and furthermore the community centre, and I think that'll serve a very strong purpose, and car parking, as well as of course retail and grocery store. So it's those items that are going to pay rent to Nameron, which will help them run their operation to ensure that the building is indeed affordable in terms of the housing aspect.
Okay. Do you see parts of this proposed building where where members of the public can also benefit from this building and be part of what's going on there?
Oh, yes. I think with the daycare and the amenity room and the community spaces that we'll have available, we think it'll be a real drawing card to bring people from the community into that
the
building.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Through the chair, Robert, there's no questioning the project that you have envisioned. It's incredible. I've seen the plans. So I'm going to focus on the temporary use, which is the parking lot. Does the annual revenue generated from this project, does it contribute significantly to the funds needed to build the long-term initiative you've started here?
I wouldn't say significantly, but it certainly does. I mean, it pays our taxes. It gives us a little bit of money. I mean, there's money needed to maintain, whether you're clearing snow or filling potholes or repairing the fence. So, I mean, it's important, it's for sure.
Fair enough. If you don't mind me asking, how much do you generate annually on a project, of the parking project itself?
Really?
Yeah.
About $20,000 a month.
The project is contingent upon federal and provincial money. So the negotiations are ongoing. What if that doesn't come through? Is there another plan for developing that? Once the 2020 expiry date comes past, what are the other options if we can't secure that?
Well, you know, when I think about it, I think if we can't get all orders of government involved, then we might have some land for sale.
Okay, thank you.
It's reality. Right?
Yep. No, that's helpful. Thank you. The report that's before us highlights some of the excerpts from the OCP, the official community plan, the downtown plan, that suggests we should not be expanding surface parking downtown. And my default reaction to these kind of extensions is no, but there's something else that's going on here with a placeholder. So what do you say in response to how we envision the downtown, and one in which we're not expanding the use of surface parking lots?
Well, I think we're in agreement with that, but I think this is temporary. This is different.
Okay.
You know, when you are working with all orders of government, that's a challenge. And we also have an election looming in October. So there's not going to be a lot of action between now and then. So it's all going to start really in November, and then we're getting close to Christmas, right? So there's a couple of things there that are going to slow the process down, but we're still working on it. We're still meeting with people. So right now we're meeting with 3 different federal government departments. So I would say federally, there's certainly an interest. And that's important to us.
Excellent, thank you. I might have read this wrong and heard you incorrectly, but I understand the commercial element has been removed from the initial concept, and there's now a parkade structure that's envisioned for the new.
Well, there always was a parkade, but what we did with the commercial is we downsized it.
Okay.
You know, we've talked to grocery, we've talked to other community-based organizations, because it's to have those services within for the people that are living there. I mean,
Perfect.
it's ideal.
Does that make it more feasible in terms of securing funding and getting this project off the ground?
Well, I think there's a number of things together that really make it feasible. Like, I think, say, have a safe and secure floor. You know, we talk about murdered, missing Indigenous women and girls. We talk about reconciliation. These things are going to happen in that building. And, you know, I know reconciliation, Regina, it's important to you guys. It's important to us, for sure, but it's important to you guys. And for us to play a role, because I don't think it's fair for us to put all that on you guys. I think it's up to us to step up, and that's what we want to do.
Perfect. My last question, is there any intention in the short term, given it's only a short term application, to maybe improve the streetscape to some extent? So parking lot's a parking lot. Is there landscaping? Is there public art perhaps that can deflect from the reality of it just being a regular surface parking lot?
Well, not right now, there isn't, but I think we're having a concert in there sometime in August, so we're playing a part of what's going on downtown, that's for sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other questions of the delegation? Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery, and we'll now look at the contract zone application amendment for 1840 Lawrence Street. Councillor Young.
Worship. So I bring CR 1953 forward. It's a contract zone amendment application for extension of a temporary parking lot term at 1840 Lorne Street. The existing contract zone was in effect for 3 years and it expired in September of 2018. If you look at the appendices on this report, you'll see two pieces of land that are going to be used for this proposed nonprofit housing. And one of them belonged to the city and was a parking lot and was sold to Namarin. So that's not part of this contract extension. It's just the new part where they demolished the building that we're asking for an extension of the contract zone. So Planning Commission is pleased to ask for concurrence.
Seconder, please, for the report. Councillor O'Donnell. Debate on the report. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. Mr. Mayor, you used the word debate. I don't want to debate. I want to compliment. I think one of the things that we had heard much about a few years ago when the land was assembled was what's possible in our downtown. And I think this has been a vision that many people have stepped up. It's not always such that the Chamber of Commerce comes forward and just comments on a building that's going to be built. But I think the impact on our downtown is significant. Impact on our community is significant. I really liked the comment. I was going to ask him for more, but I liked the comment that Mr. Saunders made about the style of the building and in terms of that commercial use and so on. I think that's certainly futuristic, shall we say, but it's also very functional. And so I think the idea of extending the parking, honestly, to me is a no-brainer and a no big deal. But extending the vision and keeping that alive in our community, that's far outweighs anything else here. I wish you good well.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Stevens.
Great, thank you. Great project, as I said. I just have some questions for administration regarding how the OCP, the downtown plan align with this project. So in the report, everything fundamentally really speaks against the extension of or the increased number of surface parking lots. Maybe administration could comment on how do you balance that with what we're seeing today? Is there value in the fact that this is a temporary extension?
Ms. Howard?
Through your worship. Yeah, it's always a balance when we're looking at temporary uses and trying to figure out that balance of what it is, because obviously we do have policies that talk about not allowing new surface parking lots. In this case, I think because of where the applicant is at in the process, as they had indicated with the federal process, we know it is moving forward. And so in this case, it's something that we definitely can support as we move forward. But there is a time limit on it again, because as the report indicates, the whole reason why it's temporary is it reverts back. So we've had this situation in another lot in the downtown, and it reverted back to the downtown, and there isn't a parking lot there.
Okay, thank you very much. This is something that's only appeared before us as a report and hasn't really become a strategy, but I'm thinking of the underutilized land study. What does it say about streetscape improvements with these kind of developments, parking lots? Is there a requirement envisioned here that we actually beautify an area, that we require property owners to invest in it, to kind of deflect from the reality this is just another surface parking lot?
Charlotte?
Through your worship, I don't have the underutilized land strategy in front of me, so I don't know exactly what policies, but I think with the underutilized land strategy, that's part of our goals, is to go through and identify opportunities where we see properties that are vacant and have been vacant, to start having those conversations, to look at different areas of the city and to look at what different programs that we can have. Through that study, there was a number of things that were identified with respect to infrastructure and the infrastructure gap that sometimes plagues developers that are moving forward, because they're not exactly sure what the requirements will be. And so I think as soon as we start to address some of those concerns, then we'll see those, because there'll be more surety. And I think that's what's been holding back some of the sites, is just the understanding. So I think as we move forward, and that report is coming actually forward to council sooner rather than later on this strategy, it's going to be coming this summer, I believe. So.
I think we're straying a bit away from the contract zone for this site when we get into underutilized land sites. So I'll ask you to revert back to the subject at hand.
That's all I have.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Any other speakers on the report? Councillor Murray, if you could take the seat just for a moment, please. Just want a quick comment.
Your Worship.
Deputy Mayor, just I want to add my voice of support for a very strong project for downtown. And just to speak in relation to the issue of this not being wholly in compliance with the OCP. And those words on a piece of paper mean something, of course, but it also means something different, too. It also means that we're trying to encourage some 10,000 people to move downtown over the course of the OCP. And economic development is the art, not the science, of building the city. It's about partnerships, and it does take time. I know Mr. Byers has worked very hard. He and his group has worked very hard to align the dots together with the province and the federal government for support. These take time. This is a contract zone, whereas if this project should not go forward, that reverts back to another function, doesn't go anywhere else. So in that regard, it's not an open precedent for downtown to be doing this. But we, as a council, have supported fully in the past this project that will see Indigenous people living downtown. We'll have supported housing. We'll have at-market housing in a very dynamic setting with the grocery store, which has been needed for downtown for some time. I fully support the project. I think it's a wonderful project, and I hope that CMHC and the province do support this because it is an excellent project. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Young, do you want to close debate? Okay, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Oppose? That's carried. Move on to our next delegation, Paul Gronick. This relates to a paved parking lot at 1124 East Dudney Avenue. Welcome to City Council. You can identify yourself for the record, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, then maybe questions afterwards.
Thank you very much. My name is Paul Gronick. I represent the Ironworkers Local 771. In 2012, we purchased 1124 Dudney Avenue East, which is directly next door to our office and training facility. We bought the house with the hope of mutual benefit between us and the previous homeowners. They would get a quick, easy sale of a structurally unsound house, and we would get lined up for a parking lot, in theory. 2013, the Community Association did not agree with this idea, and we were rejected / backed out of the application. Until recently, the Community Association approached us and wanted us to proceed with the idea again under new leadership. We put in another application and went as far as getting a letter of support in favor of the plan from the Community Association. Our parking lot would help ease the congestion on the neighborhood streets. We have anywhere from 10 to 70 patrons come to our office every day for a variety of reasons, from apprentices learning new skills and contractors looking for future work in our province. We have union meetings with as few as 12 people and as many as 400 people. If approved, I believe it would only add value to the neighborhood, upgrading the appearance of 1124 with landscaping, perimeter fence, and easing some of the parking constraints on the homeowners nearby. Thank you. If there's any questions,
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. And there are questions. We'll start with Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. Welcome. I want to just pick up on a couple of things that you said about apprentices and so on. So is the building a school? Is it used as a school? Is it used as a training ground? If you would describe that for me, please.
Yes, we are a union training center as well as an office. All of our business is done out of that office. We also have a very large boardroom where we do conduct classes, not only apprentices but journeymen as well. We also have a very large weld shop in the back. It's very deceiving in that building, where we do training as well for practical welding tests.
Thanks. So could you, just so that I understand, tell me how this kind of fits in with things that go on at SAS Polytechnic and other training centers. Where do you fit into that education component?
We are in partnership with SAS Polytech through the Ironworker program. But in order to get apprentices and journeymen job ready, they need certifications to be on the job site.
Okay.
Fall protection, different machines they need to run,
Yeah.
tools, safety is the big one.
Gotcha. And then for journeymen, what role do you play with the journeymen?
Recertification of those tickets as well as training for welding, upgrading their skills in welding, cutting, safety, machines.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dowell. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming this evening. So I visited your site on the weekend just to see for myself what it looked like, and it's that part of Dudney that's very busy and then goes under the ring road.
Yes.
So there's a lot of traffic on that road. So what does street parking look like on that road?
If we have a class and there's parking on both sides of Rupert Street, which is just beside us, it is basically one lane. Nobody else can get through. We got to take turns. In the winter, it only gets worse.
Rupert is a side street.
Yes, it is.
So
yes,
people don't normally park on Dudney itself.
We can't. It's a bus lane.
It's okay. So so you have to go into the neighborhood streets to park.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other questions that Planning Commission was interested in was the house itself. And as I drove by the house, it's a very narrow lot. Mm-hmm. But there is a house next to it. So what kind of conversations have you had with the people who will be next to that parking lot?
I spoke to the gentleman that bought that house. He is doing renovations right now. He's all for it. Last conversation I had with him anyway. I already proposed taking down a wooden fence that's on his property, as well as a tree, and us footing the bill for a new fence around the perimeter, keep up appearances, make it look nice again.
Okay. And then there's something in the report about some landscaping in the front of the parking.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we're up for that as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Stevens.
Paul, thank you very much for coming out tonight. The previous community association said no, that's my understanding.
Yes.
What's changed, and was it the community that approached you to express an interest in getting rid of these houses and doing what you wanted to do?
It was actually the community that approached us. They didn't want to go on record. They said on the side that we have new leadership, you should try again.
Right, they're on the record now. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Whether they want
Nobody
to be or
watch
not.
it, don't worry.
Yeah. I don't know what happened before. I was just new to the job when this happened before. I was in the background.
Fair enough, thank you. You mentioned the streetscape investments, landscaping, that's excellent, thank you. You had mentioned, and Councillor Young had talked about this, the unsafe houses. When you say it's structurally unsound, is it inhabited? Is it actually condemned?
It has not been officially condemned. When we bought the place, you couldn't put a baseball on the floor and have it stay there. It would roll at the corner.
Okay.
It was out of kilter.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Murray.
Paul, thank you very much for the presentation. Since the initial purchase in 2012, has there been any folks who've been outspoken other than the initial opposition by the community association since then?
Not that I'm aware of. I saw the report where there was one opposed from the mail-out.
Okay.
I don't know who it was. Sure. Obviously, I'm not going to find out, right? But we try to help out the community. I don't know why anybody would be opposed to it. So
sure. And I'm assuming that you would be open to speaking with them to talk about just the need of the 10 additional stalls.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. There are no other questions, so you can return to the gallery. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll now consider the report. This is a contract zone amendment application for a pay parking lot at 1124 East Dudney Avenue. Councillor Young.
So CR 1954 is a contract agreement with the owner, and it asks that the contract zone be amended. There's already a contract zone on the building itself to include the paved parking lot next door to the current commercial building. And the addition of the parking lot will help accommodate those who visit the building. The patrons currently park on the streets in the surrounding neighborhoods, so the parking lot will be opened up so that it will take some of that parking off of those side streets and residents can use the streets. We already talked about the fact that there's a fence proposed along the line for the neighbor who will be next to the parking lot. And Planning Commission had no problems with this, and so I recommend concurrence.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Can I have a seconder for the report, please? Councillor Hawkins? Discussion? Councillor Flego.
Thanks. A couple of the things we talked about also at planning were the corporate citizens that this organization is and how they've cleaned up that building, because this used to be a flower shop, a hot tub facility, name and accounting firm, I think, at one point. So these guys this organization has been here for a long time, and this is one of the few times that you'll ever hear somebody adding parking spaces, not taking away. So they've changed the dynamic of the structure. They're adding landscaping. They're doing all the right things. They're talking to the residents. We need more businesses like this that come into residential areas on a commercial business and beautify it and bring it to another standard. And I'm not sure whose ward this is, if it's Councillor Murray's, is it yours? Or Finder's, I wasn't sure. You should be happy with this, because this is a good thing, and hopefully more businesses take stock in this and spend a few bucks and make it better for the neighborhood that you're probably going to be in for the next 20, 30 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flego. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Some questions for administration through the chair. The report reads, a proposed additional parking area would relieve some congestion on neighborhood streets. I'm really curious, as a matter of policy, is relieving congestion on streets a priority? Is it actually an objective, or is it simply a courtesy that we're yielding here?
Ms. Harlach?
Through your worship, when we're looking at applications, we do look at the sites and what's happening in and around it. So no, it's not a direct policy, but we see the benefit because we have seen the congestion within the area. So that was taken into consideration as a positive for going forward with this proposal.
Terrific, thank you. Second question. The report does highlight that, again, with surface parking lots, the OCP, although this proposal is not consistent with these policies contained in the OCP, it is recognized that the paved parking lot will not change the character of the neighborhood, decrease the population of the neighborhood, etc. What is the defining line between changing the character of a neighborhood with a parking lot and it remaining the same? Do we have a line, or is it kind of ambiguous and circumstantial?
Ms. Harlach?
Yeah, through your worship. I think it's one where we have to look at the application that's at hand and look at the situation and the surrounding area, and that's why it's discretionary, because it might not fit all such situations. And so all those things are taken into consideration. I think when you look at the intent of the other policies, it's really about the bigger goal of retaining it. So if we saw a proliferation of this happening, then there would be concerns. But I think overall we have to take each case, and that's why it's discretionary by its own merits and what's happening within the area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Any further discussion on the report? No closed debate? Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next report is the General Capital Debt Refinancing, CM 19-5.
Thank you. I'm going to start by moving the communication that came. It doesn't have a number on it.
Well, I think that'll be after.
I thought it was before, it says.
No, that's for the Rogers one. That's later, I believe. We're going to the next report is CM 19-5.
Okay.
So this is
that is actually not me then. It's
well, anybody
somebody
can.
else.
It's the city manager's report, so anybody can.
I can move it
You want
then.
to move it? Have a seconder, please. Okay, Councillor Hawkins. The administration, any comment on the report before us? Mr. Lacey, do you have any comments to introduce the report?
So perhaps just by way of background, on March 25th of 2019, City Council approved administration to negotiate external financing to a maximum of $13 million to refinance one-time capital debt repayment that's coming due this June, on June 2nd of 2019. And that administration returned to seek approval for the requiring borrowing bylaw and a report summarizing the financial arrangements that have been made with respect to that debt. So administration has negotiated external financing for $12 million, a $12 million debenture issuance that is a 6-year term with an effective interest rate in the 6th year of 2.35%. There will be no incremental cost to the 2019 budget, as $2.2 million in principal and interest has been budgeted already in the 2019 budget related to this debt. So in other words, the city will not be required to identify new funding in 2019 or future operating budgets to service this debt. The new borrowing of $12 million is within the City of Regina's authorized debt limit of $450 million. And the city's debt outstanding as of May 27th of 2019 was $316.9 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. Any questions? Councillor Hawkins.
Your Worship, a quick question. Does the favorable interest rate reflect the fact that our credit rating is so strong at the moment?
Mr. Lacey.
Through you, Your Worship. So the city recently, within the last week and a half here, has seen an increase in its credit rating from a AA plus with a positive outlook to a AAA credit rating. Because of the timing of that announcement, we had basically been at a point where we had finalized arrangements with respect to this debt issuance, so it does not reflect the AAA rating. I will say with the AA plus rating that we had, that is a very good rating, and the interest rates that we've received on this are very favorable with that AA plus rating.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. No other question on this report. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll get into our bylaws. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Mancinelli, that bylaws 2019, 21, 32, and 34 be introduced and read a first time.
Mr. Clerk.
Thanks. Proposed rezoning to accommodate a temporary surface parking at 1840 Lawrence Street until the end of 2020. 2019-32 respecting proposed rezoning at 1124 East Dudney Avenue to facilitate development of a parking lot. And 2019-34 to authorize the issue of debentures in the amount of $12 million. If there is anyone in the gallery who wishes to address council on any of these items, I would ask that you indicate your interest at this time. There is no one, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll call the question on the first vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Hawkins, that bylaws 2019, 21, 32, and 34 be read a second time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell, that Council hereby consents to bylaws 2019, 21, 32, and 34 going to a third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Flagel, that bylaws 2019, 21, 2019, 32, and 2019, 34 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Bryce.
Thanks, I'll try this again. So I will move the delegation, or the, they weren't a delegation, but the report DE 19-64.
Well, I guess the delegation, this is Brendan Smith is here to answer questions only.
Okay.
So if members of council have questions of Brendan Smith, he's here to answer them. We do? Okay. Councillor Stevens. So if I could have Brendan Smith please come forward. Thank you for attending City Council, and if you could identify yourself for the record, your name, who you represent, there are questions from members of council.
Smith and Woodlands.
There you go. Turn it off. Yeah. Try that again.
Okay. My name is Brendan Smith. I'm with Land Solutions. We're an agent for Rogers Communications. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Okay. We do have questions. Councillor Stevens.
Brendan, thank you very much. I didn't want to come all this way without a question. The report speaks about a public consultation process that would be facilitated by presumably Rogers, or is that your company? What is entailed in this consultation? And can residents around that area essentially veto or have power to veto in accordance with federal regulations the building of this telecommunications system here?
Through the chair. The short answer is yes, it's possible. So the public consultation would be basically the standard, formerly Industry Canada's process.
Right.
Now they've renamed themselves Innovation Science Economic Development Canada. So there's a public mail out, a notice is sent out to all residents or landowners within 3 times tower height. In addition, a newspaper ad is posted in a local newspaper, kind of capturing the greater population. There's a chance to send in comments, questions, concerns. There's an opportunity to respond to that. So Land Solutions most likely would be responding in this capacity. After we responded, there's additional time for counter responses and potential concerns. After that, we go to the municipality. We're looking for a concurrence letter. So the role of the municipality and the public is they can influence the design or the location of these facilities. The location's pretty tricky because sometimes it's hard to find leasable land or sufficient space. And there's a lot of technical evaluations that go into choosing a location, but it is possible.
Thank you. So just so I can understand the order here, tonight we're gonna discuss and vote on the lease agreement. From there, once the ink is dried on that lease agreement, then it goes out to public consultation. So theoretically, if the public says, no, we don't like this or don't want it there, this is still your land and you're leasing it.
Through the chair, correct. So first step is to find a willing landlord. Once we have that, there's less risk of going to that next stage, being public consultation. Also, there's a lot of technical stuff that needs to be done. We need to design the facility. We need to develop photo simulations. We need to provide that information to the public as well as review it. That additional technical review doesn't happen until after we secure the lease.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking questions. Why would company, build a tower in a certain location? What would be the fundamental reason for that?
Through the chair, connectivity, wireless connectivity, main reason. Combination of factors. Network planners look at an area and they find deficiencies. What we're seeing more today is not just coverage, but capacity. So the way you deal with capacity means that like a finite number of users can connect to a specific facility, operating at a very specific frequency that's licensed through the federal government. So if you add more antennas or more facilities with more various antennas operating at different frequencies, you add additional frequencies at which people can connect to or devices. Right now we're experiencing a huge increase in Internet of Things, machine-to-machine connections. Think of all your point-of-sale transactions that are wireless, in addition to traditional voice and data-type transmissions.
Thanks for the capacity. I'll come back to that in a second. The fundamental issue that I remember from a few cell phone towers ago or not was dropped calls. So in other words, I was left with the impression that we need a tower here because we need to provide service for this group of people because they're not getting service, drop calls, etc. Is that a basic kind of understanding?
Through the chair, yes. Today we're seeing more of the capacity side. Usually there's sort of umbrella coverage, so to speak, but existing systems are becoming or are projected to be overcapacitated in the future.
Thanks.
So we're trying to get in front of that.
Good. So I'll pick up on capacity now from my point of view. So I know the pole was described here. It's not like the ones from 20 and 30 years ago that were kind of winding towers. Could you describe the pole first from a physical sense? What would it look like in terms of your proposal?
Through the chair, absolutely. So this is cylindrical in appearance. It's called a monopole. The last item I think we came here for was what's considered a lattice-style self-support tower. The monopole, it's cylindrical. It looks significantly better than the lattice-style towers. 35-meter height. There's a lease compound around 10 meter by 10 meter, I believe it is. All the equipment's put in a shelter that's stored at grade, and the antennas would be flush mounted onto the side of the monopole.
Thanks. What would this do for 5G?
Through the chair. So 5G is a combination of concepts. You may have heard recently Rogers acquired a whole lot of frequency, and a specific 600 megahertz frequency. That's part of this 5G initiative. So it's part of adding capacity, more frequencies to operate at, adding more antennas. As we experience this explosion in connected devices nationwide, we need more antennas. We need more infrastructure to support that, both wireline infrastructure like fiber as well as wireless. And this is one example of how to do that. This tower would incorporate several different types of antennas operating at different frequencies and all its related systems. So it's really forward-reaching in terms of not only addressing connectivity issues today, but planning for the future.
So let me finish with a little wrap so that I can put it into my terminology. So I understand as we progress into 5G, one, we're going to need more poles, probably somewhat closer together. The reason for that is because there are more machines wanting to speak to one another, and we have requests for more data and so on, from a very basic point of view to a business point of view. How am I doing?
Through the chair. That's right. And it's also about real-time transmission. So some of the new spectrum or frequencies that are available, they're very fast. It's almost like fiber optic over wireless connectivity. As autonomous vehicles come into the picture and other devices where real-time info and ultra-high definition video content is desired, this is going to become increasingly important.
Good. Thanks for helping me understand.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. I was hoping for a wrap from you, Councillor O'Donnell, because when you were saying you were going to wrap it up. Okay, sorry, I digress. So I'd like to know from this tower, and I've heard this before, but residents are always concerned about noises that come from things like this. Is there any buzzing, humming, any noise that comes from this facility?
To my knowledge, no. Sometimes you might see some of that with guide wires, the larger scale telecommunication facilities out in the country. But for this type of urban installation, none of that exists. So it's just a cylinder, and there should not be a nuisance.
Okay, thank you for that. I also see in the report it's got an option to lease years out after this initial lease. So when you do eventually what's the right word, decommission or disassemble this tower to either put something different there or to cease using this space, tell me what that entails through you, Your Worship, on the site.
Through the chair. At the end of the lifetime, there's a chance to renew if a new structure is desired. Negotiations would happen at that time with the landlord. If the city decided to use that land differently or didn't want the facility, Rogers would have to remove it. So they would take it off the land, remediate it to how it looks today, and look for another site.
Okay, so it's remediated to this part that it is today?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that. Councillor Flagel.
Thanks. These seem to be popping up across the city. I want to ask you something that one of your competitors told us a while ago when they were putting a tower in Uplands, and that they weren't going to build them close to residential within the fall range of a tower. So if the tower was to fall over, you would stay away from any houses, any buildings that would be there. And based on what I'm seeing, I don't think that's going to happen here. If that tower was to fall over, is it 1,076 feet? No. How tall is it? 350?
Through the chairs, 35 meters.
35, so 100 feet. Would that fit within, through you, would that fit in that fall zone?
Through the chair. I don't have that particular information in front of me, but these towers are designed as such so that they don't fall laterally straight over. If there was a structural failure, it would happen in segments, so that segment would pop off, and then that
Okay.
fall closer to the base. In addition, there's a lot of design work and professional engineers expertise that goes into designing and maintaining these facilities. It would be maintained over the lifetime. There would be structural assessments.
So my thing would be, as because this one is close to the Louvain, if it happened that a semi-trailer happened to go off the Louvain into the ditch through and hit your tower at the bottom, you're saying it would sort of break off in sections?
Through the chair, that's my understanding. Also, there's a substantial foundation, and it's designed to withstand a significant amount of structural stress.
Perfect, thanks. You made a comment, and through you, Mr. Mayor, is you said lattice style? Other ones, or there was one that you guys came forward with that was a lattice style as opposed to a module?
Through the chair, correct. One of our last proposals was for a lattice style tower.
And what is that one got, like feet, wings? Is that how that one's designed, or is that?
Through the chair, it's kind of like a 19th century type facility. You can see little individual metal members connecting the various beams as it goes up, as opposed to this being a cylindrical monopole type structure.
So if, to modernize an approval that you had, 2-3 years ago, would you look at changing that to this style, the new style, or is it what you got to do?
Through the chair, every site is unique. So also the height has a big influence, so that the structural ability for each tower varies from height to height. So monopoles usually see 30 to 40 meters maybe. 40 meters is pushing it. It also becomes very cost prohibitive as you go above that or at that level. So usually lattice style towers or self-support towers you'll see within that range of 40 to around 80 meters, I believe. Above that, then you need a guide type structure, and you're taking up a whole lot more land.
Okay, thanks. One more thing. If let's say SaskTel came to us next week after we approve this, if we approve this, and said we want to build a tower there too, is there a restriction that you need between two towers to make them both work, or does it matter? Could you have two monos side by side, one SaskTel, one Rogers, one whoever? Could you do that, or is there a distance that you need between two poles?
Through the chair, you're speaking to interference. So the federal government regulates radio frequencies in Canada. So when a carrier buys a right to operate in a certain frequency, that means it's not shared with another party. So that deals with the interference issue. So to answer your question, most likely not. Two towers are often or more built next to each other, but because the equipment's operating at different frequencies, they're not interfering with the operation of the competitors or anyone else's.
Okay. Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. There are no other questions. You can return to the gallery. Thank you very much for answering questions, and I'll turn the report over to Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. So I'll move CR 19-34, which is the option to lease city property at 2102 Edward Street to Rogers Communication.
The seconder for that, please. Councillor Massanelli.
Thank you. The recommendations are as follows: that the option to lease from the City of Regina owned property located at that address in Appendix A to Rogers Communication be approved. Number 2, that the administration authorize to finalize any other commercially relevant terms and conditions of the lease documents. And number 3, that the city clerk be authorized to execute the option to lease and communication site agreement documents upon review and approval by the city solicitor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Speakers to the report. Councillor Stevens.
I just want to confirm something I had asked the delegate, kindly answered. So regardless of the outcome of public consultation undertaken by Rogers, they're still leasing the land. So we're going to go ahead with this deal. If the public doesn't want it, there's a reason why this tower can't go up, that contract is still in force, or is there provisions in the language that would let them walk out of it? Through the chair.
Mr. Lacey.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. So actually, the lease has an option to lease in which, for that consideration, they would provide the city $500. Should the cell tower construction not go ahead, for example, it isn't approved, then that would be the extent of the obligation by Rogers.
Thank you.
To that point, Mr. Lacey, it's my understanding this is a federal communications regulation, and the federal regulation can actually place them where they want to. What they want to do is to be sensitive to the location and have this consultation, but at the end of the day, we are not the deciding jurisdiction to where it goes. It is the federal government. Is that correct?
Yes. Through you, Your Worship, that is correct, that at the end of the day, we are just leasing city land. The consultation process is guided by federal regulation. That will determine whether or not the cell tower through the federal process gets approved. Just with respect to the councillor's question, should that not be approved, Rogers has the ability then to move on. We would receive $500 for that consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey, for that. Other speakers to the report? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Our next delegation, Lyndon Kozakowicz. You can please come forward. Welcome to City Council. If you identify yourself, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation. Members of council may have questions afterwards.
My name is Lyndon Kozakevich, and I'm with the Regina Motocross Club. I'm also representing the South Saskatchewan Kart Club and the Regina Auto Racing Club, because we're all in one area. We're here today as 3 separate groups that are located in the same area with one common goal, being able to provide camping on site to the people that participate in our respective sports. The RM of Sherwood, which we are located in, has approved us to provide camping, and today we hope to continue that progress towards our common goal. I'm speaking today on behalf of all 3 groups, but being part of the Regina Motocross Club, I'm the most familiar with our own events, so I'll speak a lot to that. I understand the other clubs would not be the exact same, but I think they are similar enough to the way we operate that it should be still relevant to all the groups. We provide an attraction to our area and a place to safely carry out our respective sports in the community. By us having these areas for our sports, we're able to host local races, provincial races, and national events, which brings in people, money, and exposure to our city and province, and helps grow and promote our sport the same way that other professional sports get people interested and attract people to their respective sport. At the national level, we are bringing in professional motocross that is televised and aired on TSN and Fox Sports, which is huge for our sport in our province. As an update, we have now lost our national race due to the ongoing uncertainty of camping being allowed. To not allow people to stay overnight prevents us from hosting races at any level. For us, not having camping, which eliminates the ability to host races, would be the equivalent to saying you can practice hockey, you just can't play any games. Provincially, other clubs that host events in our race series that are also on city leased land and would include overnight camping are Swift Current, Lloydminster, Yorkton, Weyburn, and the Saskatoon Club is on provincial land. The Regina Motocross Club has been at its current location hosting races for 43 years, the Car Club for 52 years, and more recently the Kart Club has formed and been operating, and all without incident. Camping is not something we plan to charge for and will only occur during our events. This would not take away from other traditional campgrounds in the area, just something that we need to provide to put on events and continue our clubs and our sport in the Regina area. Overnight stays the night before a motocross event are the practice of motocross the world over and is synonymous with the sport. This is how it has been and will continue to be with the sport wherever it takes place. Our events are not local competitions like other sports. Participants come from all over our province, neighboring provinces, and beyond. Our competitors that come from great distance also come at great expense, and financially it would not be feasible for them to stay at hotels or pay for off-camping off-site. Also, logistically, it does not make sense as they bring with them everything they need for the competitor, and they set up their camp pit the day before to be prepared for the race day. The registration for entrance is at 6:30 a.m. and then the rider safety meeting starts at 7:20, so being on site is essential. Everything that is brought on site at our events is also taken out, with the exception of some typical household garbage. The Regina Motocross Club supplies large garbage bins from Loras Disposal on site, as well as we hand out garbage bags. We do this because we take pride in our facility and we don't want any mess left behind. We as competitors all visit each other's facilities throughout the year and year after year, so everybody is very respectful. As for liability, we carry $5 million in liability insurance year-round, which is above the $2 million the city requires. We have confirmed that it does cover overnight camping. We also are required by our national sanctioning body to obtain event insurance, and we get $5 million in insurance for each event as well, and it also includes overnight camping. The only overnight stays would be during organized and structured events. Financially, we receive a favorable lease rate from the City of Regina, which helps reduce our expenses side. We're thankful for that. We're one of the few sports that does not receive any outside funding to help pay for our ongoing expenses.
You have 1 minute left in your time frame.
We don't receive funds from the city, the province, or Sask Lottery, Sask Sport to help pay for our annual expenses and maintain our clubs. To take away the ability to host races by not allowing camping, it would be cutting off one of our main ways to produce enough revenue to operate year to year. Like I've said to others throughout this process, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but this is something that could literally put an end to our sport in our area. It would also be devastating provincially to lose Regina as a race location for us, as we are a center post in our sport. Thank you for your time and consideration on this. It is extremely important to all the groups here today.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There are questions. Start with Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks for being here tonight. You did a nice job in your presentation because you provided more information for me beyond the report. I want to ask a question on two sides. So if you were to host in your sport a national gathering, how many people would that be in terms of trailers there? I don't care how many are in the trailer, but how many trailers would it occupy?
Like at the national, and I'm not great at estimating, but the trailers would be less trailers, bigger size, so they would become more of a modified semi-trailer, and there would be maybe 10 teams that have that capacity at that level, and then it goes down from there, and right up to the amateurs in our area are able to try to qualify for these national events, and some people, it's a financial thing where they'll go across the West Coast, or just somebody that wants to try and make a go at a national event that's local, a local pro or local good rider.
Okay, good. That helps me understand. Would you assume that the other two sports that you're representing would have a similar type of situation where the number of trailers would be not that many, but larger or with different capacity?
Yeah, I think that our sport probably has the greatest amount of trailers. Like our series is provincial, so we have 2 races in a year, and we go around, so everybody's bringing a camper or something like that, where they're, I believe, a little bit more local than the motocross.
Gotcha. So we don't need the Craven Jamboree campsite. That's what you're assuring me?
That's right.
Okay, good. Yeah. I don't know anything about motorsports and SAS Sport, but I just want to ask the question, have you applied to SAS Sport for sponsorship, and do they accept motorsports?
Apologize for interrupting. But yes, I personally have contacted Sask Sport. They had the wording in there was that you could not receive funding for anything with a vehicle that could be driven on roads, basically.
Okay.
And importing a motorcycle, a dirt bike from the United States, I've been through the process where they are stamped off-road use only.
Right.
So with those two pieces of information, I thought that maybe that was our window of opportunity to receive funds. Didn't get very far with that, and then when I went to re-approach the situation, they'd actually changed that wording in there, and when I had asked why, they weren't sure why that wording has changed, but they did acknowledge that the wording was changed. So it is the motorsports in particular that cannot receive funding from SAS Sport.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Councillor Findura.
Thank you, Len. Good to see you. This is a good day. I feel this was going to grow your sport. It's going to help you out there. I know that the group in the area were trying to before have a camping, and so this has been a long road to get to this point. So the question is, how important is this to grow your sport? Not just the sport alone, but for the persons that are coming in from, let's say, middle of the United States down here. How important is this to attract something that some groups that have never come here before?
It's quite large. Like motocross, kind of like someone that lives in a small town are used to traveling, so we do travel everywhere. We've had opportunities to host Western national races, which would bring everybody within Western Canada to compete, and then Eastern Canada has theirs, and then they compete in the nationals. So it would be a big attraction. We've had talks with the Hotel Association about attracting that national race back, and like without having the camping, it would very quickly go down a slippery slope of, I don't think we would even have a club, because if that's one of our our financial gains where we make enough money to go year to year. And I always say to people, we run on a shoestring budget. Like we don't have a lot of money, and this is something that helps us.
And to your worship, the auto racing. I know there was a function, there was an event that they couldn't attract people from further away to come to this thing. So I know you will speak, or you might speak on their behalf, but how important would that be to auto racing club?
Yeah, it's essential. Like with us, if at each year they make a schedule, and if there wasn't camping allowed, I think we wouldn't be included in that schedule just within the province alone. So then you're basically eliminating events, and the sport's going backwards. You're always trying to progress every sport. Everybody's trying to get more exposure, more people coming, more people interested in the sport. And this would be a large step backwards, I think, for all clubs if we couldn't provide events, basically.
Okay. And then thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundura. Councillor Murray.
Thanks. Just to get a better understanding, what about the age groups that both for the motocross club or for the other two clubs you spoke of that compete in a lot of these competitions?
So in motocross, I'll speak to, because it's probably got the broadest range. The youngest is 4 to 6 years old on a 50cc motorcycle, and our oldest group is 50 plus. So 50 plus being unlimited. So it really includes everybody. I personally have a nephew that started riding at 3 years old. So yeah. It's all ages and a lot of youth, obviously. That's what
multi-generational.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. We'll now look at report 1955. You return to the gallery. Thank you very much. We'll look at 1955. This is the lease amendment King Park area. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. I'll move CR 19-55, which is the lease agreement for Kings Park area.
A seconder, please.
Overnight camping,
Councillor
Regina Auto
Martinelli.
Racing Club, South Saskatchewan Kart Club, and Regina and Area Motocross. Okay, so the recommendation from Finance and Admin is as follows: that approval be granted to amend the lease of the Regina Auto Racing Club, South Saskatchewan Kart Club, and Regina and Area Motocross Club to allow overnight camping during events at each of the leasees' locations. That administration be authorized to finalize the terms and conditions of the lease amendment or addendum documents, and the city clerk execute the lease addendum agreement as prepared by the city solicitor. We did talk about this at Finance and Admin at length. Went into a little more detail and questions, and we did feel that this was a really good deal for those clubs that we're giving at this lease. So we do support them in different ways rather than grants and the like. So we are supportive of these groups, and we felt it appropriate in order for them to stay viable and sustainable to allow overnight camping in this space during events. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. There's no other speakers. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Pardon? No lights are on here. Does someone want to speak? Okay. Sorry about that, Councillor Finder, if you wanted to speak. Okay. My light wasn't on here on my dash here. So we'll move into Executive Committee reports. We have 3 reports. Councillor Finder. It's the Heritage Neighborhood Summer Programming.
Thank you, Worship. I rise to bring CR 19-56. This is in the Heritage Neighborhood Summer Programming. Recommendation of the Executive Committee that the transit route changes outlining in Appendix B be approved and implemented effective June 10. And this stems, Your Worship, from rebuilding the 2 swimming pools, especially the Heritage Pool, the Maple Leaf Pool. This will help the residents in the area to make their way to Wascana. So we're changing the route to help the residents from the area to get, especially children, to get a little easier to the pool. And so the committee adopts adopted resolution concurring recommendation in the report, Worship.
Thank you for that. Another second for that, please. Councillor Massinelli. Discussion on the report. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next report is an FCM coming to you here in 2020. Councillor Fundera.
Once again, Your Worship, I urge to bring CR 1957, that the City of Regina host municipality for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, 2022 Annual Conference and Trade Show in the 2022 Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators, Summer Annual Conference. Recommendation of the Executive Committee, 1, that the City Manager be authorized to negotiate and enter into agreement with the Federation of Canadian Municipality, FCM, to host the 2022 Annual Conference and Trade Show occurring June 2nd to 5th, 2022. Number 2, that the City Manager be authorized to negotiate and enter into Memorandum of Understanding to host the 2022 Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators Summer Conference and Annual General Meeting occurring May 30th to June 1st, 2022. And number 3, that the City Clerk be authorized to execute the agreement with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators upon reviewing and approval of the City Solicitor. The committee adopted resolution to concur in the recommendation. This is a report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Fundera. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor, you had your hand up all the time. Councillor Bersiani. Discussion on the report. Question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Last report in the Executive Committee is the friendship agreement with the Fujioka, Japan.
Your Worship, I rise again to bring you CR 19-58, City of Regina, City Fujioka, Japan Friendship City Agreement. Recommendation of the Executive Committee that the Mayor be approved to enter into Friendship City Agreement between the City of Regina and City of Fujioka, Gunma, Japan, as outlined in Appendix A. 2, that the administration be directed to develop guidelines for assessment criteria involved in determining future sister city agreement and friendship city agreement by Q4 of 2019. And this stems from City of Regina and City of Fujioka have a friendship going on between the exchanges with students in high schools. This has been going on since 1991, so this just falls right into the realm of what we're doing here. So, and the committee adopted a resolution to concur in the recommendation containing this report, Your Worship.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Fundera. Any discussion on this report? Quiet bunch. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Finance Administration, Report 19-59. This is the City of Regina Annual Report of Public Accounts. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. CR 19-59. So the recommendation from Finance and Admin is that the draft 2018 City of Regina Annual Report outlined in Appendix A, which has been revised, and the draft 2018 Public Accounts as outlined in Appendix B be approved here at City Council.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Have a seconder, please. Councillor O'Donnell. Any discussion on either one of those two reports? All in the same report. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Through the chair, Barry, I sent you about 3 pages worth of questions. I'll just focus on the highlights here. I need some help understanding the accounting and the terminology. So the difference between the net financial asset position, which is listed as 24.6 million as a surplus, and the accumulated surplus of 137 million. If you casually read this, it would suggest that we're in this massive surplus situation. We're flush, but we're not. Can you help explain those concepts as well as what that kind of surplus means, please?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Your Worship, I will perhaps ask shortly here Ms. Schultz or Ms. Schmolenberg to answer that in a little bit more detail. But generally, it's our financial statements are prepared in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So it is a different methodology than how the budget's approved. I like to refer it as a budgets on a cash basis, whereas the financial statements are based on accrual accounting, include depreciation, etc. And that's why you see those differences. But perhaps I will, Ms. Schmolenberg, I will ask her to perhaps get into a little bit more detail on the differences.
Ms. Schmolenberg?
Great question. As we mentioned, we do this according to public sector accounting standards. The net asset position that you're talking about is mostly a difference between our financial assets and our financial liabilities. The main item that pushed us from a net debt position last year into a net financial asset position this year are a lot of non-cash items. The city has to record a lot of benefits obligations related to our pension plan. Those went down this year. Also, our landfill liability, which is another non-cash issue, that went down by about $20 million, which puts us into a better position. Other than that, we also have a difference about $10 million due to assets related to land inventory. Those are assets that we've moved from our tangible capital assets up into our inventory so that we can sell them. Those are the types of items that put us from a net debt into a net asset position. Net asset position obviously means that we're in a really good position into the future. Then the accumulated surplus. The accumulated surplus is, as with all of the financial statements, this is all of our consolidated entities added together. And it would equal, the 138 would equal those items that we just discussed. And as well, the other item that makes up the difference is our tangible capital assets. Tangible capital assets increased by about $85 million from last year to this year. And that would be the net of all of the new assets that we've invested in, less the amortization that we take against that. So those in total are what make those two numbers.
Wonderful.
That's a great answer.
Someone recording that? So just to clarify, we would include as an asset the stadium, a rink, a road, a pipe as assets. Is that correct? Just to get a grasp of what we're counting in this.
Mr. Mellenberg?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
When we're talking about assets, we would talk about a stadium, a wastewater treatment facility, roads, a rink, everything that the city actually owns in some capacity.
Correct. The $2.2 billion of assets includes all of those items that we spend on long-term capital assets.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Page 16 mentions some projects related to the rail yard renewal initiative that were funded through the Green Municipal Fund from the federal level. What project specifically might this be, or is it generally tied into the renewal initiative?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Your Worship. So we did. I'm just trying to find it here on page 16, right? So we did receive initially in the early stages of the project some funding, $175,000 through the Green Municipal Fund. And I can't remember specifically what that went towards, but I believe it was more with respect to site remediation and some of the work with respect to determining some of the work that would need to be done there.
Terrific.
Councillor Stevens, I believe what this was for was before we purchased the land, we received federal assistance to drill on the site to see what was actually on the site as part of our agreement to purchase the land initially.
Thank you very much. Page 55, if we look at the line item related to the Global Transportation Hub, it increases from $0 in 2014 to $2.4 million in 2018. I'm just curious about how this money works. Is this money that we collect and then remit to the province, or is this money that's going into the public coffers at the municipal level?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Your Worship, I believe, and I will just confirm with Ms. Schultz, that this is tax levies that we collect, I believe, on behalf of the Global Transportation Hub, and then they're remitted to them. But Ms. Schultz?
Ms. Schultz?
Through you, Your Worship, that's correct.
Okay.
So we're collecting the property taxes, basically.
Right. And of that, we really don't get anything except for what we've negotiated in that separate deal that we've brokered with the GTH. Okay, thank you. On page 68, the amount that we're spending on contracted and general services has jumped again substantially. Is this a consequence of us contracting out more work that we haven't been doing before, or is this really us taking on more projects and needing the assistance of these contracted service providers?
Mr. Lacey?
Through Your worship. I don't know if we have the specific details here on that. I will refer that a question again to Ms. Schultz. I will mention through the 2019 budget process, there was an undertaking for administration to report back with respect to professional contract services and what was included in that amount.
Yeah.
So we are doing work related to that. With respect to the actual in the report here, I don't know if we have the information here tonight, but I'll ask Ms. Schultz says we don't have that specific information for you here tonight.
That's fine. Thank you. We've used a benchmarking platform to kind of weigh the city versus other municipalities. On page 68, wages are said to constitute 77% of our total expenses. Do we know how this compares to other municipalities? Is a common question I get. Are we on par in terms of how much we're actually spending on wages from the operational budget?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, your worship, I don't have that information with me. I'll ask Ms. Schultz whether or not she has any additional information to provide, perhaps with respect to NBN benchmarking.
Ms. Schultz?
Through you, your worship, no, I don't have the information in that level of detail with me today, but as far as the wages that we have across the organization, they're all negotiated agreements, and when we compare across the different jurisdictions, then you will find differences in those.
Okay, thank you. On, I think around page 78, there is a section that begins with an overview of the stadium. Just so I can understand that our annual loan payment in 2018 was $11.4 million. Is this roughly how much we will continue to pay for the balance of the debt over the next, or whatever's left of the 31.5 years?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, your worship, I do believe that that price is consistent, our payment is consistent over the years. But I'll ask, Mr. May has shaken his head, so yes, okay. That is correct. The payments are that amount going forward.
Thank you. On page 81, it highlights the lease generated from the riders at $1.5 million per year. Now, the report reads that this amount will be adjusted annually to account for inflation. Is that suggesting that the current deal we have with the riders doesn't account for inflation, and in the future we're going to negotiate better terms and a better agreement with the Rough Riders?
I'll ask Mr. Once again, I'll ask Mr. May to confirm this, but it's quite typical when you have contracts that you need to be thoughtful about what inflation might look like and increase the lease rate accordingly. But Mr. May?
Through you, your worship, the agreement with the riders is a term that runs from February 13th, 2017 to March 31, 2047. It's for 30 years. So taking that into consideration, we wanted to make sure that we took into account the effect of inflation. Had we left the lease term without this escalation factor, the rents, if we'd paid the same amount of rent in 2047 as we did in 2017, we would have lost ground. So the escalation factor is in there to make sure that we don't lose ground.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Just want some clarification on the wording. My last question related to the stadium here. If we look at page 80, revenue generated from community use actually declined from 2017 to 2018. I understand this might be a question better suited for Real, but why is that? Is it less usage? Is it lower fees? Presumably we want more people to use this and we want to generate revenue at the same time. Any way of understanding that decrease, please?
Mr. Lacey.
That question to Mr. May.
Mr. May?
Through you, your worship, in 2017, the primary difference between 2017 and 2018 on this revenue line is we had found that Mosaic Stadium, the new stadium, costs more for us to secure for community events, and we were doing our best to recover what we could. That increased cost from our users. However, they found it to be prohibitive to them, so we've decided to scale that back to what they were paying at Old Mosaic Stadium.
Thank you. This is a planning question through the chair. We talk about infill service agreement fees on page 19 and 29. There's also, I think, a very startling figure in here where we see the infill rate plummeting since 2014 from 573 units to 22. with the cumulative infill rate sitting at 14% overall, 5% for 2018, which is half our target. What do we imagine is going to happen down the road now that we are implementing the infill service agreement fees?
Ms. Harlock?
Through you, Your Worship. At this point, that was something that we had talked to council about, that we needed to get the rate in. As we move forward with the underutilized land strategy, the neighborhood plans, the corridor sequencing plans, those are the details that we'll move forward with some recommendations to council on how do you incentivize intensification in certain areas. And I think I've spoken about this before, that the recommendation is you want to target an area. We did that with our housing policy before, and it really works to meet the needs. So as we move forward, we will look at those things. But we have to remember that where we're at right now is just where the economy is. It is natural that we would see a decline and not see those numbers increase as right now.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
You finished?
Yeah.
You just see your time was almost up. You had perfect time.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor O'Donnell?
Thanks very much. My questions are going to be about reporting just generally, not specifically. So if I would have the same document from the province as this public account reporting, would it look the same? Is it using the same terminology? Would I be able to read it in the same fashion?
Mr. Lacey?
I'm asking specifically, while you catch your thoughts here, that are our requirements the same as what the province puts on itself for reporting? That's what I'm getting at.
Public disclosure?
Yep.
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Your Worship, well, I would say there are some differences. For example, municipal financial reporting is different than provincial reporting. And I think you will see differences between Crown corporations and ministries.
Yes.
I would say, taking all those differences in account, there are certainly similarities and consistency between what is reported through our annual report and financial statements and the province.
Okay, thanks. So while we stand here oft making decisions, it looks to me like this document pretty much has everything in it, from how much revenue from high school football to whatever is in here. Is that consistent with what other orders of government do? Can I read their detail the same way? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm trying to get I'm going to go somewhere on this in a minute here.
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Your Worship, and really I'm responding with respect to my experience with the provincial government, as I haven't looked at it specifically lately. I would say the level of reporting we do here compared to ministries, significantly more reporting here. When you get to Crown corporations, some of the reports do get into a financial analysis by management, similar to what you would see here. I would say overall, this financial report has significantly more information in it than when you typically see from a Crown corporation or a ministry. Okay. Theirs would be summarized at a higher level.
Good. You and I are on the same page on that. I appreciate that. So I want to pay a compliment to the young lady behind me. I actually enjoyed her comment. And after all these years, I actually understand some of the terminology. Not very much, but some of the terminology. So I'm wondering, Mr. Lacey, I'm going to put you on the spot now, if there is any value in not only this document, but in an executive summary that kind of gives it so that if I took it to a grade 10 algebra class, they could actually figure it out with me. That's what I'm getting at. Or is that standard practice anywhere? Or we're actually, what we're doing here is we're meeting the rules of the law, and that suffices. So your thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
Before you answer that, I thought you were going to suggest that maybe we could send this to the province so we can give a good example of how we can have public disclosure.
Let's hold that thought and we'll come back.
Mr. Lacey.
Through you, Your Worship, I think there's always opportunities for improvement on how we present and share financial information. And I have commented certainly internally to administration that the city's financial statements are one of the more complex set of financial statements that I've had the opportunity to work with. And municipal accounting is quite a bit different than what you see for general accounting. And we have had conversations internally about how can we switch the terms, for example, that maybe people are more familiar with. So we had a conversation about non-financial assets, right? Another way of looking at that's like equity in the private sector. And so I do think there is opportunities for us to look at how we can present this information perhaps in a more meaningful executive summary way as we look forward to future reporting.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate that. So just a little bit of a review about some of the things we talked about. We have a AAA rating. Now, I'm not looking for an answer, but I'm wondering how many other cities in Saskatchewan have that rating. I wonder if the province has that rating, by the way. Just curious. Second of all, we talked about our debt and where our debt load is and so on. And while we would all like it to be at zero, it's in a reasonable condition. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the AAA. And now we have an annual report, which is pretty darn detailed. And as Councillor Stevens brought out, he could pick out some things and throw it out, and we can get answers for that. I'm loath, though, to take this to my next community association and say, did you know on page 73, do you know it says it? They haven't read it. And I know we post it. And it just, to me, kind of seems that somewhere along the way in the future, there could be a big document and a little document that we can actually say, here's some things to consider. So just a thought more than anything. And by the way, to the mayor's question, do we mail this to the province do we report to them that here's our financial status?
Mr. Lacy?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, there is a requirement in provincial legislation for us to provide this information.
That's what I thought. And in your brief time with us, did you ever get a letter back to say thank you for the good job and the AAA rating or anything like that?
Mr. Lacy, you have to answer the question.
Yeah, well, the communication in my short time with the city has been one way on this information.
I think we should ask for listening, and please read it.
Yeah.
That would be good. Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Bresciani, you're next.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the report. Now, I do have a question in regards to page 80, a little around Mosaic Stadium. On the line facility fees, those did not go up at all. Everything else kind of went up. Can you just explain, I mean, what are the facility fees, and with costs that are incurred, is there no reason for them to go up, or what are those? Through you, Your Worship.
Mr. Lacy.
Through you, Your Worship, I'll refer that to Mr. May.
Mr. May.
Through you, Your Worship, that revenue item is the $12 per ticket that is charged on a rider ticket, and it's for their 10 home games and their similar amount of tickets sold each year, and so that's why that's consistent from year to year.
Thank you. Through Your Worship, so that's the $12.50 that comes back to the city,
Correct.
So will that go up over time as our expenses go up?
Mr. May.
Through you, Your Worship, no, it's not tied to inflation or to our expenses. It's tied to the number of events held in the stadium. So if we were to hold more events in the stadium, then that revenue line would go up. So we're negotiating with Everest Place over a facility fee for the NHL game, for example. So the more rider games, the more special events we have in there, the more facility fee revenue we will be able to bring into our coffers.
Okay. Well, I think one of the concerns, now if I read this correct, this shows a $3 million loss. Is that accurate?
Mr. Lacy.
Through you, Your Worship, you're referring to facility fees?
No, sorry, the net surplus, the deficit for the year, the $3 million at the bottom, sorry, on the page.
For 2018, yes, that including the principal and interest payments. It was in a deficit of $3 million for the current year. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just important to note, though, just to add that the $12 ticket fee actually pays off the $100 million loan we have from the province. So just that's a really integral element to remember.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and I think that's great. I think the point I'm trying to make, though, is that it's paying off that loan, but we also, as the costs are incurring year after year, everything else goes up. So that's my question. The more events we're having, it costs more. It costs us more. So again, that's why I'm wondering the $12.50. When does it go up?
Mr. Lacy.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. So One of the things to remember here is that for 10 years, we're increasing the property tax annually by 0.45%. So in the early years, we did fully anticipate we would see overall losses on an annual basis until the 10 years of property tax increase are in place. And at that point in time, we expect that over the funding model that we have forecasted here, that overall we'll be in a surplus position. But we do recognize early on, while we're building that property tax base or the revenue piece, particularly the costs of the loan, the principal and interest payments, will result in us being in a loss position until such a time as we get the property tax revenue piece to at a point that we can move into a surplus position.
So just to be clear, so the residents right now, the taxpayers pay the 0.45 on the mill rate, but then also this $3 million is it's showing at a loss. Is that clear? Like, are you saying that we are also paying the $3 million, or no? Through your worship.
Yeah. So through you, your worship. So this is built on a long-range funding model where we anticipate the reserve was in a positive balance in the early part of this project and in the early part of the operation of this facility. As the revenues aren't at their, we've built the model such that revenues will grow over time, particularly with respect as the 0.5% per year property tax increase comes into place, that over those years, revenue will grow, whereas expenses on the principal and interest portion will stay consistent through that time frame.
Yes.
You might see some increases in the operating costs. The model that we have forecasted takes those into account. The model, as the facility gets older, also we anticipate there will have to be some additional maintenance costs, replacement of assets, refurbishment of the assets over the 30-year model. We built the model such that taking into account all those costs over the 30 years, plus the revenue that we anticipate to generate, property tax as well as the other revenue sources that are listed here, that over the 30 years, the reserve will be in a positive position. Right. It will vary from year to year, depending on the revenues and the expenditures that are required. So you will see surpluses in some years. You will see a deficit in some years. The reserve balance will fluctuate as a result of that. The reserve balance is actually an accumulation of all of the previous years. And as I mentioned, we do anticipate, per our model, we are forecasting over 30 years, it'll be in a surplus position, the reserve.
In 30 years?
At the end of the 30 years.
Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councilor Parshiani. Other speakers to the report? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now I'll move into motions. Councillor Hawkins, related to the restricting of single-use plastics. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll read the motion which I'm proposing, ask for a seconder, and if I get one, I might briefly say a few words. Therefore, be it resolved that City Administration bring to Council by the end of the first quarter of 2020 a report outlining the environmental impact for Regina of the use of single-use plastics and, without limiting the generality of the foregoing, of the use of plastic checkout bags, plastic straws, polystyrene drinking cups, and food takeout containers. The two, in the preparation of this report, City Administration consider measures being taken by other jurisdictions and consult with Regina residents and interested stakeholders with respect to this issue. And three, that the said report set out options for limiting the use of single-use plastics and in the city, together with the City Administration's recommendations. This is fairly straightforward. Single-use plastics, as the motion indicates, are...
Just see if you have a seconder for that, please. Okay, Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much. The motion sets out the kind of single-use plastics that I'm talking about, basically plastics that can only be used once, and it indicates that the environmental concern here is that these plastics litter our environment, that they clog our landfills, that in the case of plastics like polystyrofoam drinking cups, they don't disintegrate for decades. In fact, the motion also anticipates that there are alternatives to the use of single-use plastics. We need some kind of report or indication of what those alternatives are and what the viability of those alternatives are. And there are ways of reducing the use of single-use plastics through a whole variety of mechanisms, ranging from education to write out bans and everything in between. This report asks for some indication of how that waste can be reduced. It is particularly important at this time as landfills locally and around the world are increasingly refusing to take waste that involves single-use plastics at all. So the solution to that is in part going to be that we have to live a little differently, that we have to limit our use of single-use plastics. The report also asks the administration to take a look at what other jurisdictions are doing, both in Canada and more broadly in North America. Cities like Victoria, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal have all considered this issue. They've all had reports on this issue. They've all taken measures of one variety or another. And I think what we're looking for here are the best practices from the lessons learned in those other cities. I just want to say this one last thing. We've passed a motion that by 2050, we aspire to be a renewable city. I believe that the population of Regina supports us in that aspiration. This is a step in making that aspiration real. I think it fits with our desire to be environmentally responsible, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. So as a first step, I'd ask that Council ask the administration to bring forth a report of this type. And once we have that report, I hope it gives us information that helps us go down the path of the next steps that may be required. It's not just enough for us to talk about these kinds of environmental issues. We're at a now stage where we have to be up and doing something about them, and I hope that this report will help with that. I'd ask for your support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. We have speakers to this. Councillor Mancinelli.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I stand in support of this motion, and if allowed, I'd like to make a friendly amendment to add microbeads to the particular list of plastics in line 1 of the motion before us, just because I believe they're one of the most dangerous forms of plastic we see. And on top of the landfill liabilities, Councillor Hawkins mentioned, they're also of danger to our water supply and to others' water supply as well, and I think they are worth noting in the first line of the motion. Once again,
I'd accept that as a friendly amendment, subject to the seconder. It was my omission.
Okay. So are you okay with adding it as a friendly amendment? Okay, so we'll include it then.
thank you. I stand in favor.
Okay. Councillor Moore, you're next.
Thanks. Yeah, so I rise in support of the motion. I just have a couple of questions for administration regarding single-use plastics and our current recyclability of them. What rating for plastics? Is it 6 and below that we can give? Is that getting pretty technical right now? I'm wondering how much percentage of single-use plastics are we able to recycle through our means at the City of Regina?
Mr. Ronwright.
Through your worship, I don't have that level of detail, but I certainly can get it.
Okay. No, just give some context to how much is actually being thrown away versus has the ability to recycle. And with the changes to China accepting certain types of plastic, I'm very much in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Flagel.
Thanks. Yeah, I rise in support of this as well, because this is about 5-6 years ago. I stood over by Superstore and had CTV interview me, and bags were flying everywhere and all kinds of stuff. And at that point, I think I blamed Moose Jaw if the wind was blowing from the west and Saskatoon if it was blowing from the north. But now it's here. The picture of Councillor Hawkins in the leader post standing like he was a superhero or whatever it was inspiration to a lot of my residents. Because north of Capital Motors, I have 220 acres of city-owned land, And a lady came and phoned me, and her name is Amanda, and she said to me, she said, how can we go and help the city clean up that land? So making a few phone calls and doing a few emails, found out that the city will provide you with garbage bags. We'll provide you with a location where to leave the garbage bags when they're full. So what she did was through the social media, Facebook and everything, got 220 acres of Regina land cleaned up in 2 hours by 45 of her residents. Lake Ridge residents, I think there's a few Lake Ridge Addition residents, etc. So it prompted me to maybe add, not even to add to this, but when this report comes back, it would be interesting to know what we can actually pick up off the streets and reuse, and what we can take. And what my point of this whole thing is those people made me start to think, you know, in the wintertime, we have or had the snow busters, the snow angels, where neighbors would help out neighbors, doing good deeds, doing this and that. We have a large contingent of people walking in the city of Regina continually, just walking and looking at the garbage beside them. Maybe a little bit of aerobics and jazzercise. We could create a little bit of a contest to have everybody walk around down the sidewalk, pick up the bag, put it into a bag, tag the bag, take a picture of it, show the city of Regina, and in the meantime, they're walking down their streets, cleaning it up, taking up the paper bags, the coffee cups, the takeout containers, etc. So that might be something to put some incentive to the citizens of Regina, if there's a way that, and that might be something to find out if other cities are doing that, or is it something that we wouldn't look at. If you think about the highways, people are walking in the ditches picking up pop bottles for recycling and for money. You look at further down the highways and sports clubs and rec clubs, they're all sponsoring a cleanup of a highway. Maybe there's something we can do with the city streets. I'm not saying go into everybody's yard and cross the streets just to go get a garbage bag, but if it's on your side of the street. But I don't quite understand Councillor Mancinelli, what he said was to be added. I don't know what is it that you're talking about?
Councillor Mancinelli, just stand up and speak to it.
So microbeads would be used for agitation when you're using a soap. When you have a hand cleaner and you can feel it scrape, there's usually two products to use. One of them is environmentally sound, walnut shells, and the other one's off of microbeads. Microbeads can't be broken down and they're passed through the water supplies. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm in favor of that too. But I think the whole thing is that this report is going to bring back a potential solution down the road. What I want to know is how can we make something happen for the residents to engage in cleaning up the city a little bit, helping us all out, and maybe implementing what we call snow angels or snow busters in the winter months, and then maybe in the month of May, beginning of late April, have a one-day walk-around cleanup and bag tag everything, and somebody wins a new lawnmower or a leaf blower. Something like that. That might be something to look at, but totally in support, but I think it's a great way for the residents to start to engage in their city. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flego. Councillor Bresciani.
So the question I have for administration, I fully support this. Thank Councillor Hawkins for bringing this forward. How are we communicating with businesses right now, for businesses, restaurants, for recycling? Do we have any conversations with any businesses, or is it just totally up to them? Through your worship.
John Wright.
Through your worship. So our current recycling program is for residential properties only, not with commercial properties. They deal with their own recycling. Some will have cardboard recycling on site, so they deal with a private contractor to pick that up.
Okay, thank you for that. So through your worship, through this motion, would this entice administration then to also communicate with restaurants, businesses in regards to looking at what other cities are doing of prevention, and how are they not using or going to brown bags, things like that? Does this motion say that for administration to take that forward as well?
John Wright.
Through your worship, yes. As we gather information from other jurisdictions, those will be questions we will ask and get clarification on.
Okay, great. Just a comment. I think it's really, really important that, I mean, we're asking our residents of Regina to recycle and looking at everything that they can do from taking their own bags to their grocery store, but yet the grocery stores still have these products available. And when we look at Vancouver or down in California, they are way ahead of us. And I think the big thing is to getting us kind of, as Councillor Flagel said, working all together. So if they can provide, and I know we've already got some restaurants that have gone already to banning a lot of their products that they're carrying out. So I think it's worthy in that way. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barshani. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. The motion has my support. I actually have a question for the author, Councillor Hawkins, with regards to point 2. When you talk about consultation or consult, I'm curious how the administration interprets this. Are you thinking about a poll like we did with the smoking ban or town hall? I'm curious about the scope of the consultation. I say this because I think residents have wanted to see this process built into the Renewable Regina approach. Curious about your thoughts on this.
Your Worship, thank you for the question. I'd leave it to the administration to determine the appropriate manner of consultation, bearing in mind that the administration has gone through a number of consultation exercises. I'm thinking of the one with respect to smoking, for example, in which it's been able to gather information from the public and from different stakeholders. I'd expect that kind of approach in dealing with this.
Wonderful, thank you. So I guess to administration, when you see the word consult, what's the next step if this passes? Timeline, how you open this up to the public, please.
Mr. Onright.
Through your worship. So to that question, Councillor Stevens, we've not had an internal discussion about that. So the first step would be to have an internal discussion. We would involve communications, who usually will lead how we're going to approach public consultation. But we definitely have some history. The smoking bylaw was a prime example, and we'll look back at that and have a conversation as to how we'll move forward in terms of who we're going to engage with and when.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. My comment on this is that it's time. And yesterday I was in a store and the owner of the store said to me, when is the city going to, and they use plastic bags, when is the city going to ban plastic bags? We're ready, even though ours are recyclable. We need to be doing something. And so people are starting to mention that to me. I've been trying to retrain myself because I feel guilty if I have something in a plastic bag. And so every time I go into a store and I didn't bring a bag with me, I make myself buy another cloth bag. I now have a trunk full of cloth bags, but I'm getting better. So it's a case of changing behavior, and it will take some time. But if the stores didn't have a plastic bag, then I think it would be much easier to change behavior. So I'm totally in support of this, and I thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Other speakers? Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The smoking bylaw, I'm hearing people talking about it, but we actually didn't do as much public consultation with that because it was a provincial ban that was put around the smoking, and that's what we based our bylaw. Am I correct?
John Wright?
Through your worship, that is correct. I believe we had discussions in the community about it, but that is correct.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't using an example that wasn't really how we would do public consultation. Yeah. So in knowing that, I see a different public consultation coming up with it, and I'm in total agreement with this. We already see companies that are using paper straws. We already are seeing companies actually move that way. I worked at McDonald's when I was a kid, when they used those styrofoam burger holders, and they've changed to paper ones. So so we're moving in the right direction, and maybe us as a council giving a little push to make it so that there's a ban around some of these things so people aren't allowed to use them is the right thing for our community to do. And it's the right time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Frindera.
Thank you, Worship. Totally in support of this. So the comment would be is we engaging our youth, our elementary and our high schools. I had a conversation with St. Catherine Community School, and they're looking at coming up with a recycling program at that school. So it's important to start right from the bottom with the kids. And like Councillor Young mentioned, I walked out of the store because I forgot my bag, and I felt I can't walk out of this store with that plastic bag. So all my stuff that I bought was without a plastic bag, just sitting in my cart. And so that's exactly as education. So, and a comment about the stores, because we as a consumers, we are the end users for everything. So this is a good start, but I think we need to go a little bit further, communicating with whoever manufactures that, because it ends up with me. What I purchase, I pay at the end user. But I'm suggesting, as we go in and consulting, is going to the schools and get opinion from our young. I mean, you see a lot of stories out there that our young people are rising up, standing up, and doing a lot of good initiatives to educate us, older residents, to really think about how and what is recycling and how do we do that. So this is a great motion. I was asked about that, and I'm supporting it. But again, it's the young that will teach us how to get to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frindera. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks for the opportunity to support the motion. Reference was made to Victoria. Specifically in Victoria, you cannot have a bag given to you. And so most people in Victoria are carrying a bag with them. If you go into a store and buy a shirt or a dress or a coat, there is no bag for you. And you either have your own or you have to pay 15 cents for a bag. The grocery store, if you have to buy a bag, the only option is paper or the reusable bags that we all see here and so on. I contrast that with where I just was in a grocery store where every one of the bags, the plastic bags, was double and triple packed. My kids were appalled. So I'm in the US, just so we're clear. Further to that, we could not recycle. They don't recycle, they throw. And so there's some contrast here. And my point that I'm trying to get at is that I have a feeling the motion will pass unanimously. Everybody seems to be on the bandwagon, which is good. But I think we're also sending a signal. The consultation is, for me, not whether we do, it's how we do. How quick do we do? And in what form do we do? I don't want to mislead anyone. When I raise my hand, I'm going down that path.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Murray, you will take the chair, please.
Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Dipper. I will support this. This is a very good motion. Thank you, Councillor Hawkins, for putting this forward. Just a couple of comments. Most have been said here. I want to speak about a separate issue, though, that we haven't talked about. That's the legal right to do this. And I'd like to ask the administration to give a general statement. Our understanding is that we can do this. What's in our purview, what's in our jurisdiction, that we, for local purpose, if you will, but we cannot have a general statement that would have global implications here for obvious reasons outside our jurisdiction. That'd be my interpretation of this. So we are within our legal rights to do this. Is that right? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. City Solicitor.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, that is correct. We did examine the legal authority for the city to regulate in this area. And in our view, it would be under the city's authority to regulate business activities. The motion as drafted invites the administration to look at a number of different elements related to regulating in this area. And so as part of that, we would, any report coming back, we would certainly be providing legal support to the administration to make sure that anything that comes forward by way of recommendations are defensible and within the city's authority.
Thank you for that. Well, I do support the friendly amendment on microbeads. I think that may be an area that might be more difficult to manage and control by this council. I take a bit of a different tack with relation to the consulting with Regina residents. We may pass this report, and I'm sure we will, as I'm sure it'll be unanimous. But just to say that if the public says we don't want you to do that, just say that I think we have an obligation to talk that through and not assume we're going to tell you whether you like it or not that you're going to do this. So I think we need to be cautious in how we talk to residents. I do believe, though, that residents are generally speaking want to see this, and they'll be happy to see how we do this. But I'm most interested in seeing the best practices in other jurisdictions, what's been done. The ones listed here, such as Washington, D.C., Hawaii, and California, have a much bigger population, but they also have a different set of tools in the toolbox. They are much like in the States, like a state themselves. A city would have a tremendous taxing powers and different authorities we do not have in Canada. See what happens in Vancouver and Victoria and Montreal would be interesting to see that as well. So look forward to see the report. I think it's time that we do this, and it's time that we listen to what residents want to see and take our direction from them, but I certainly support the report as written.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Hawkins, do you want to close debate?
To say I'm very gratified that the comments my fellow councillors have made and for the level of support they've indicated. Thank you.
You have just closed debate, so I will call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we also have break time. I'd ask a motion for a 10-minute recess. Councillor Hawkins moves that. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Bryson seconded it. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. So we're pretty close to finishing our agenda for this evening, but we do have notice of motion. We have 3 notice of motions. And I'm going to begin with the discussion on, or the first item is MN 19-7 from Councilor Mancinelli related to the reconsideration of school zone safety motion. Councilor Mancinelli, if you want to speak to this.
Actually, through the chair, with respect to my colleagues, I'd like to make this actually a motion from the floor. It's been brought to my attention through administration that if we don't make a decision on this tonight, if it was put off for a month, it would interfere with the administration's ability to supply and install all the necessary signage for the start of the fall school year and interfere with their work plans. So I'm hoping to get a unanimous consent tonight to be able to speak to this on the floor of council tonight. And that way, if there's agreement or disagreement, at least we won't interfere with administration.
Okay, I will put the question to members of council and ask those who want to waive notice of motion to debate this tonight. All those in favor of that? Those opposed?
Can I have that as a recorded vote?
It's actually too late. Can we do it?
Yes, we've done it.
Okay, we'll do it. We'll do it.
Okay. I'll start with Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Flagel. Yes. Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Young. Councillor Stevens. Councillor Findura. Councillor Bryce.
No.
Councillor Murray. Councillor Mancinelli.
I hope to be in favor here.
Mayor Fougere.
Yes.
It's 10-1. So it cannot proceed.
We can't
tonight.
proceed. We need unanimous agreement. So it would be, at the earliest, would be next council meeting.
I intend to drop the motion then. That will interfere with administration completing their work on time. And the reason for this motion was safety of the children, not to interfere with administration. So for me, it's a dead issue.
Thank you, Councilor Mancinelli. So there are 2 other notes of motion from Councilor Stevens, and I would ask him to read not the whereas clauses, but the resolution on both those.
The strategy of improving public communication and engagement about street cleaning schedules, identifies the cost and cost recovery options related to towing vehicles in all areas of the city when scheduled street sweeping is underway, identifies additional deterrents and incentives that could result in residents moving their vehicles during scheduled street sweeping, identifies the cost of adding an additional street sweeping during the year. Second motion, MN 19-9, identifies the costs and implications of guaranteeing sidewalk replacement within 1 month of the completion of work related to the sidewalk's initial excavation. Second, identifies the cost of short-term mitigation efforts guaranteeing walkability, such as asphalt capping, to be completed immediately after sidewalk demolition when underground work is not being conducted and in advance of a full replacement.
Thank you for that, Councilor Stevens. And I'll move on to our bylaw. Councilor Murray.
All right, through your worship, I move, seconded by Councillor Bresciani, that bylaw 2019-33 be introduced a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor Young, that bylaw 2019-33 be read a second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor Stevens, that council hereby consents to bylaw 2019-33 going to a third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously.
I move, seconded by Councillor Findura, that bylaw 2019-33 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now we have 2 inquiries, and I would ask first Councillor Hawkins and then Councillor Murray, in that order, to read the request. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. My machine, here we go. Further to procedure bylaw 9004, I would like to request that the following inquiries, City Administration, be tabled at the 27 May 2018 meeting of City of Regina Council, and the answers appear on a subsequent city meeting agenda. The inquiries are as follows. Further to item MN 1811, Make Regina a Renewable City, that City Council passed on October 29, 2018, please advise: 1, if the report due in Q4 2019 could be made available at an earlier date, and if so, when? And 2, if the 4 possible actions for improving the environmental sustainability of the city have been identified, and if so, what are they?
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councilor Murray?
Through the chair. Further to procedure bylaw number 9004, I would like to request that the following inquiry to the City of Regina Administration be tabled to the May 27th, 2019 meeting of the Regina City Council, and that the answers appear on the June 24th City Council meeting agenda. The inquiry is as follows. The administration provide a response to the cost and implications of installing 3 crossing arms at the railway crossings located in the Eastview subdivision to allow the neighborhood to become a quiet zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Neither inquiry is debatable, but there'll be a report back to City Council. Motion to adjourn, please. Councilor Bryce, seconder. Councilor Fundura. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, everyone, and have a great evening. Yes.